Today's evening is, in fact, a very, very special evening for us, Punjab Lalit Kala Akademi, people of Punjab, Chandigarh, and the region. The reason is that a very, very special association or collaboration between Punjab Lalit Kala Akademi and the Creative Black Country happened due to my friendship with Prashant Panjar and Dinesh Khanna, who is sitting over there, the people who are responsible for the Delhi Photo Festival. They are the ones who introduced us to the Creative Black Country. So this association is not only with Punjab Lalit Kala Akademi and the Creative Black Country, but also funded by the Arts Council of Great Britain, British Arts Council, Memory Project, Nazar Foundation. Those who have worked very hard are Iona, she'll come on the stage, she's the curator of the show, and the director of the Creative Black Country, Ms. Dosanjh. She could not be here today because of certain reasons, but there are other people from the organization, Sajida Khan and Carrie Thomas. They are here, they'll come on the stage and introduce themselves and let you know about the Creative Black Country in a while. There is a great thought which has gone into it. There is an idea, there is a purpose. Why this exhibition? This exhibition is all about diaspora people and people of Punjabi origin here and there and other, because this Creative Black Country is not only in Birmingham, there are 21 such organizations in UK. So India being into the 70th year of its independence, because of that, the British Council and the Arts Council of UK has envisaged this particular program. So Ms. Dosanjh, Iona, and all the artists who have been very carefully chosen by this organization, they have worked really very hard on what they really wanted to show, why they wanted to show, what is the story behind it. Each one of them has gone into their own thought processes along with Iona later on how to kind of present it. When you go downstairs, you'll notice those who are regular, what kind of an effort Iona and her team has really put into it. She's here. She's been here for many times before, but here, from the first onward, she's been constantly there, day and night, working on it. So I really congratulate Iona and her team and people from Black Country and all the artists who they are here for the last few days. And the artists, as you already know, are mentioned there: Jocelyn Allen, Jennifer Pattison, Andrea, Fernandes, and our own from Delhi, Uzma, Mohsin. Now, I'll invite Sajida Khan. She is representing the Creative Black Country to introduce the Creative Black Country and exhibition to all of you.
Thank you so much for that incredibly warm welcome. Good evening and Sat Sri Akal to you all. I'm Sajida Khan, the Programme Director at Creative Black Country, and it is such a pleasure, especially as a first-time visitor to India, to be here at Punjab Lalit Akademi for Girls Gaze launch. This is, like Diwan said, it's a very unique and special international collaboration between Creative Black Country, Multistory, Nazar Foundation. And it came about, as we've already heard, because in the Black Country we have the largest Punjabi diaspora outside India. And since the arrival of these communities in the 1940s, the Punjabi people have created a really unique identity in the area of finding the cultural, economic and social landscape. We, as a programme, exist to encourage people who aren't interested in arts and culture, and we're here to get people more interested in the arts. The word, the Black Country, has lends its name. You might be interested in why it's called the Black Country. It's because it lends itself to the past, and it goes back to the mid-19th century due to the smoke from the many thousands of iron-making foundries and forges, and also the working of the mines and the 30-foot thick coal seams as well. So that's just a really quick snapshot of Creative Black Country and why we call the Black Country as well, because it covers Walsall, Wolverhampton, Sandwell and Dudley, 4 boroughs in the Black Country. So on behalf of Creative Black Country, we would really like to thank Arts Council England, British Council England, the 4 artists, the designers, the producers, the coordinators in England, the translator, the printer, the curator, Mr. Diwan Manna from Punjab Lalit Kala Academy, and of course yourselves as our guests, because there's been a tremendous, tremendous amount of work that's gone into this. We've been hearing in England how all the work's been shaping up. It's been absolutely fantastic to see this tonight and see the launch. So please do encourage your friends and family to see the exhibition. And also come along to the talk that's been mentioned at the British Council tomorrow at 5 p.m. So that's me done, and I'd really like to invite Iona on stage now. Thank you.
So rather than me being on my own on the stage, I'm inviting all 4 artists as well. So we have Jocelyn, Andrea, Jennifer, Uzma. So these are the talented women artists who have put on the show. So thank you, Sajida, for that introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me really enormous pleasure to be in Chandigarh in particular. It was one of the things that we really wanted to do, was to premiere the show in the Punjab, so it's really wonderful that we're here in the state capital. And it also seems appropriate that the Reimagine India project, and also the fact that the women that we are representing are either of Punjabi heritage or they are actually from the Punjab. So it was a really important and crucial part of this project to premiere the work here. So the photographs that you'll see below are the culmination of a 12-month-long project that actually began in 2016 in April, when the Creative Black Country pitched for funding from the Arts Council England. We were invited by the Creative Black Country with Multistory and with Nazar Foundation to pitch for the money. When it came to ideating how we wanted to express the link between the Black Country and India, we thought that there was nothing more compelling than to do it not only through the voices of women photographers, but also to do it about women. In India, women photographers are underrepresented, so it's a real privilege for us to be able to promote, support, and expose their work. Equally, when it came to trying to find a really compelling subject about which we could tell stories, we also felt that to see their work through the prism of women and young girls was also a really important sort of point that we wished to make. And given the remit of the Arts Council England to spread arts in areas where maybe they wouldn't naturally be shown, it was a really wonderful initiative for us. Now, one thing links all of these artists together. They are women. And as I said, it was really important for us that they be a part of the project. Now, unlike other projects that have taken place in the past with things like grants, money is given and Indian artists tend to stay in India, British artists stay in Britain, or they each visit their own different countries. But what is really not unique, but a kind of important point about this project is that each artist visited the other country at least once, if not twice. They spent up to about a month each time in the respective countries, really building stories about the women and the young girls that they met. Now, another very important point that we wanted to state was that each of the 4 artists was selected on the basis of their age. They are of different ages. They have very different practices, very different approaches to their art. They're stylistically different, and I hope that when you go and visit the exhibition downstairs, that the diversity of the work that you will see is something that you will notice. I think the other point that I would like to highlight about this particular exhibition is that despite the fact that still photography is at the center of what these artists do, it is by no means the only aspect of their work. So when you go downstairs, you will see text, poetry, video, moving image. So I think nowadays photography is really moving into all sorts of different spheres, and how people wish to tell their stories is moving beyond the image to encompass a lot of different, sort of multitude of different ways. So as the women, as the artists visited India and the Black country, certain subjects that you'll see downstairs were teased out. One of them to do with patriarchy and the visibility and agency of young girls. We also have an exploration of tradition and culture through the prism of motherhood and the Punjabi lorry. Andrea, in fact, is an artist who's looking at this idea of place, belonging, and identity. And then the last artist that we have, Uzma, is really looking at issues around the impact that migration has on the lives of women. But far be it from me to discuss their work in detail. That's really something for them to do, and it'll be a pleasure for me to hand over the baton to each in turn. I too have certain thanks that I would like to impart, not only to these super talented women who I've had the privilege of working with for the past 12 months, but also to a really fantastic production team. So I just want to quickly mention Kuldeep Rohila, Gunika Rishi, and just a general thank you to everybody who's been involved on the project, particularly to Diwan for allowing us to completely take over his gallery for the last week or so. Thank you very much. So I'm now going to hand over the baton to Jocelyn. So just to give you a very brief introduction to who she is. So Jocelyn is an artist, in fact, who is born in Birmingham, just next door to the Black country. She works mainly with still photography, video, and performance. She has a master's degree in photography art from the London College of Communication. And in fact, her graduate show was exhibited in 2015 at the Photographers Gallery, which is one of the more prestigious institutions in the UK for photography. It's one of the longest standing and has a really very significant reputation. Her photographs have been exhibited at festivals and group shows in the UK and internationally. She is interested in exploring themes of representation, self-esteem, anxiety, and identity. Her work in the gallery is titled, "You Will Live in This World as a Daughter." Jocelyn. Well, I think, do whatever.
Okay, hi, thank you for coming. So with the project, I really started as an outsider, and I said I'm an outsider. I knew little about the Punjab, and little about Punjabi people. So initially when I started to research, so in the 2011 census for the Punjab, for every 1,000 boys that were born, 846 girls were born. And so I really was surprised by this kind of disparity. So I was interested in how it is to be a girl, a woman, a daughter of the Punjab. So I started off in the Black country, which I live in London now. So I was kind of going up and down every weekend. I met people through events, friends of friends, friends of family, etc. So I started there, and talking to the girls there, often they would say to me that their brothers had more privileges than them. Their brothers were allowed to do more things. There were different rules for boys. And even families where there's a lot of daughters, the grandparents cried when the last granddaughter was born, which kind of surprised me. And then in November, I visited Jalandhar for a month, and everyone in the Black country told me to expect to have my mind blown when I was going, which I was only really surprised by the amount of dogs, that it was warmer compared to the UK, things like litter and pollution. But I was really surprised by the amount of women who play sport, generally just so they can have a chance to have further education. And I also visited a children's home where the main kind of reason for existing is a safe place for girls to be abandoned or left, rather than people committing female feticide. But generally the women who are in my project, it kind of says a lot about their upbringing and their families and their guardians. because there was a lot of girls who probably wanted to be in the project but weren't even told about it because the people in charge of them said no from the beginning. So I think if the project had been about men, it would have been a lot easier because they can generally do what they want. And there was a woman who wanted to be in the project who I really wanted to photograph, but her brother said no, whereas her dad said it was fine. So I just really wanted the project to kind of celebrate my subjects. They're quite playful, which fits with the personal style of my personal work. And I just wanted to finish with a poem by one of the sitters, who actually it's this girl Pravjot, and she wrote, "If I was born a boy, I would be able to walk freely the streets. If I was born a boy, my parents would have handed out laddu at my birth. If I was born a boy, I wouldn't have had to work twice as hard for the same reward. If I was born a boy, the villagers would not have pitied my parents. If I was born a boy, I would not have had to argue for the same entitlement. If I was born a boy, marriage would not be a conversation at 21. If I was born a boy, I may have been heard harder whenever I speak, but I was born a girl, and I am here."
So we next have Andrea. So Andrea Fernandes' practice involves collecting memories, information, and observations in order to recreate elaborate snippets of life. She has a master's degree in photographic studies from the University of Westminster, London. Since 2012, she has worked as a curator of photography, focusing on performative interventions and site-specific installations. In 2015, Andrea, along with 4 photographers, co-founded Bind, an experimental collective interested in developing original practices and using invented forms of engagement with the medium. She is one of the mentors of the Anjali workshops during Angkor Photo Festival, Cambodia, and currently teaches critical thinking in photography at Ecole Intuit Lab in Mumbai. Andrea has been commissioned for artistic projects in India by Goethe Institute, Project 88, which is the gallery, Studio X, Focus Photography Festival, and Wellcome Trust and PhotoWorks in the UK. Her work in this exhibition is called... I'm sorry, my Hindi is too embarrassing to say it out loud. Or in English, You Laugh as Much as You Cry. Andrea.
Thank you. I'll just give you a little, I find it a little bit odd to speak about my work, especially since you haven't seen it yet. So I'll just give you a little introduction and what to expect when you go in. I went to the Black Country and traveled to Punjab looking for something to make work about, and I tried to find some kind of commonality, and I didn't. So the work has culminated into some kind of imaginary space. Like Iona said about the 4 of us, I'm just going to steal lines from everyone's speech now. The women that I met also had nothing in common except that they were women and they had some connection to Punjab. So eventually I guess I'll just give you a little gist of the kind of conversations that we had, and the conversations are what made this work what it is. I'm going to read a few conversations, and I'm going to literally let the work speak for itself. So one woman told me about mallards, which are these ducks in the UK. They're green and blue and shiny. They're called mallards. So she said, we're a lot like mallards. We can survive anywhere. We eat anything. We'll even breed with anything. But we are also preyed on a lot because of our color, because we look different. So these are the kind of conversations that really excited me, because of course I started with migration and partition and arranged marriage and all of that. And I think that's still the root of and the foundation on which the work lies. But it's also just about these kind of general daily life profundity. So chapter 13. let her learn from her mistakes. That's one of those nonsense things people have heard so many times. They almost think it's a fact. The truth is that we don't learn from our mistakes. We learn from our non-mistakes. You know, when things work out, think about your own life. A clinical psychologist told me, so it must be true. This is nice. I like her. She was a cool lady. She said, नटराज के पेंसिल्स और हमारी मूर्ति भी चाइना से बन के आते हैं. सारे चूड़िया की फैक्ट्रीज भी बंद हो रहे हैं, डिमोनेटाइजेशन के वजह से, और अब ये जीएसटी के वजह से. जब हम भगवान बाहर से ला सकते हैं, तो चाइनीज चूड़िया भी पहन लेंगे. This was a text. 15 को 6 बजे suicide point. You all know where suicide point is. Now, for those who are not from Chandigarh, it's not. I mean, people commit suicide there, but it's also like a romantic place by the lake. This one is cool. Chapter 37. My brother was in the army. One day when he was home for the holidays, I was going through his bags to steal some money, as we do, and I found a letter that he was writing. He had been asked to write one that would be sent to us in case he died. He was livid when he found me slumped against his bags, wailing like a baby after having read it. It was so beautiful and touching, and all he could do is yell at me because now he'd have to write it all over again. This was at a dinner where the person who had invited me had made an excellent dinner, and everyone was coming up to her and, you know, complimenting her, and one of the people came up to her and held her face and squeezed her cheeks and said, "Kudi tayar hai." And then this woman said, "To live alone is how that sentence should end." Also, I had many realizations when I was traveling here and in the Black Country. And some of it is apparent in the work. And most of them made me feel very silly, but I really appreciate that at the end of the work, I know so much more and I'm better off for having done it. One of the funny things was, I initially planned to come to Chandigarh to do this work and to do most of the Punjab leg in Chandigarh because I like cities, and I usually try to do as much work in cities as possible. So Chandigarh seemed, I'm from Bombay, so you know, I'm most comfortable in cities. So I came to Chandigarh with that plan. And I think one of the first few people I met was like, "So Chandigarh is not in Punjab, but now that you're here, you should visit the Rock Garden. Punjab is just like down the road." And that's how my work went on into Jalandhar and Ludhiana and Amritsar and all of that. So it was nice to have that realization.
The third of our artists is called Jennifer Pattison, and she's based out of London. She's a graduate of the London College of Communication and began her career as a photographer's agent before focusing full-time on her own practice in 2012. She has received numerous awards for her work, including second prize at the prestigious Taylor Wessing Photographic Portrait Prize at the National Portrait Gallery in London in 2012. She is interested in otherworldly stories and creating characters from her imagination. Her work in the gallery goes by the wonderful title, Rice Pudding Moon and the River of Dreams.
Hello, it's very nice to be here. Thanks for coming. Right, so as Iona just touched on, I think when I started to think about this project, I had recently made a body of work where I was using actually a novel as a sort of creative jumping off point. It had lots of characters, it had amazing stories about things that might not actually happen in the world as we know it. So I decided when thinking about this project, well, there was two things that influenced what I chose to do. One is, you know, often I would look outwardly for inspiration, but at the time I had a I was a new mum with a 6-month-old daughter, and I decided just to take my inspiration from literally what was kind of right in front of me, usually on my lap, which was my baby. And I noticed actually at one time when my mum was singing a lullaby to my daughter, I had quite a kind of poignant, emotion-filled moment where I couldn't actually remember the lullabies that she was singing to Florence, but I had a very strong kind of unconscious memory, if you like, and I realised there was something in that I wanted to explore. So then, when given the project, which was a fantastic opportunity, and to try and think about something that was going to link both communities of British Punjabi women and women from the Punjab, it felt at the time a really fitting theme to look at lullabies and lollies, as they're called here. So I also was interested to see if whether women who migrated from the Punjab in the 50s and 60s had actually migrated with those lollies from their country. So in my research, I was introduced to Dr. Surjit Singh, Professor Singh from the University of Punjab in Patiala, who had been carrying out some research on lollies, specifically from the Malwa region. And through conversations with him and one of his PhD students, I was able to have some translations made, and there was my kind of jumping off point, if you like, which was a collection of sometimes quite poetic lollies and sometimes quite scenes of domesticity, possibly quite patriarchal ones, where boys were being sung lullabies and girls were in the background cooking and sewing, and I wanted to take some elements of these lullabies, which I wanted to weave into a more lyrical series. I also spoke to a group of women in the Black Country and asked them about their memories of being sung lollies, and most of the women I spoke to couldn't remember. And then I also asked them, well, did you sing lollies to your children here? And they were like, no, we didn't have time to do that. We were working really hard, we were working shifts, and if we did sing lullabies to our kids, we weren't going to sing to them in Punjabi, we were going to sing to them in English, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, because we wanted to fit in. So then, through further conversations, and I realised that the lollies that they still connected, or they connected to, and reminded them of where they came from, was lollies that had been popularised and actually, it seems, preserved by Bollywood cinema, particularly of the 50s and 60s. So I worked with imagery from those clips, a lot of imagery of the moon, and also my own perspective and take on all of these influences, and thinking about treats for children and what they might be now. The wonderful characters that appear in the lolly, like Chanda Mama, and I was able there to explore something I enjoy, which is creating characters and dressing them up, and was able to really enjoy exploring that. So rice pudding, I've forgotten the title of my own piece now, but Rice Pudding Moon and the River of Dreams is, I'd like to think, quite a joyful piece of focusing on dreams and childhoods and the experience I think that I was having of being a mum for the first time.
So Uzma Mohsin was born in Aligarh and graduated from the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. As part of her image-making practice, she uses personal voice, metaphorical exploration, and abstraction to unravel narratives of people, place, and their histories, and to build a conversation around the idea of belonging. Her work has been exhibited both in India and abroad at the Alliance Française and the Japan Foundation in New Delhi, at Chatterjee and Lowell Gallery in Mumbai, and in Switzerland and Japan. She is the recent recipient of the Al-Kazi Foundation documentary grant in 2017. Her work is the last exhibit in the exhibition and is called Love and Other Hurts.
So I think the work, for me, there are two, three things which, there's an image in my head of Punjab, which I think I have seen from my childhood. And it's of, whenever I travel and I see these trucks go by, it's of a woman sitting, they paint their trucks of a woman waiting, ghar kab aoge. That's the kind of, so I find that this, obviously, in the Punjabi kind of psyche and folklore, love is a very, very central theme. And I somehow started this work, it so happened that when I first landed in England, it was my first trip to England, and I went to Wolverhampton, and I was carrying a book with me, and it was it's like a kind of a autobiographical account written by a person who has grown up over there. His name is Satnam Sanghera, and he's written this book. And I was kind of reading it, and it was kind of strangely wonderful to be in a place where you were a stranger, but you also kind of got to know of that place. But somewhere that kind of became very clear to me that I would like to, whatever I do, I would like to tell it through these personal accounts. And so my work is largely about like looking at accounts and voices of women around love and longing, family bonds, cultural, bonds, relationships, and your relationship with community. So it's kind of around that. So, when you go down, you'll probably, it's kind of a tapestry made out of a lot of different stories of different women I met. But one of the other things which I think, for me, which was very important in the work was, how, as a photographer, this is something which I have, I think, been kind of thinking about, is that I usually go out and then try and tell a story of another person. And obviously, no matter how good the pictures might be, it will be my version of the story. So I was struggling and kind of thinking about this thing of how do you translate a person's story into the image itself? So kind of somehow getting the women to participate in the project and to kind of look at material which is from them. So that also, it runs as a thread in this entire work. I actually worked with a small kind of it's a very lovely community initiative called Apna Heritage. There are two people there in Wolverhampton, Anand Chabra and Sarabjit Sra, who have been collecting photographs from, the community there in Wolverhampton. And they've been collecting family albums of various people from there. And they have a small collection which kind of dates back to the 50s, as early as the 50s. And so I went through these entire set of images also to understand what the journey was about. And I also was looking, then obviously I also kind of did a selection of I talked to a few women and I kind of gave them cameras to kind of shoot. I actually work a lot in analog, so it was not like giving them digital stuff, but I actually gave them small disposable cameras, and I asked them to kind of contribute by shooting what they would want to share with me. And then I got all these rolls back, and I had done extensive interviews with them, and then I kind of shot on top of those rolls my version based on the interviews I had with them. So there's that sense of working, with material is kind of also a layer of this project. which I think is kind of important, because, you know, I just feel that for me, what interests me is how also images are made. And nowadays everybody, I'm sure, is using a lot of images. Everybody has a phone and they will be. So when you are clicking, it's nice to kind of sometimes think about what you are shooting and how you're shooting and how something is made. So that definitely is of interest to me. Yes, and I just also want to just quickly end it by just saying that I'm really, really grateful for the support for this kind of work. You know, it's not just about being a woman photographer or a man photographer, but some kind of support to work on ideas which are absolutely, which all of us in a way have kind of, you know, there are ideas which you go to a new place and you kind of start from scratch. I mean, that really involves getting a nice, you know, you need support for that. You know, otherwise you'll be working with the kind of magazines or whatever where the brief is given to you. To figure out your own brief, it requires time and it definitely requires support, and I want to thank all the people involved in this project. Really, thank you.
What a wonderful presentation, a very sensitive, poignant, quiet, gentle, as most women are, apart from being very intelligent, caring, you know, all those things which we associate with women. But what it shows us is we are in the 21st century, and even today, there is so much of a gap between the way men or boys are treated, the way girls or women are treated. And as someone mentioned that, you know, the disparity, I think Jocelyn probably mentioned that disparity between the sex ratio. But that's not only there, that's something very, very cultural. And at the same time, at the political level, we do not have that kind of representation in our parliament. So this is something which is, you know, very, very important. Not only that these are all women who have kind of been associated with this project, but also because women crying about themselves or trying to find a space for themselves is not the alternative. It is the entire set of people, society, all of us have really got to get our heads together. Artists, they are making us aware of the problems being associated with the women in a very gentle, tender, caring manner. But there are other people who are like doing agitations or activists or writers, poets, dancers, musicians, you know, a whole lot of people. But we must all put our hands together to do something about this anomaly, that how in 21st century, the women, as one of the stories goes, that women are trained to live by the cultural norms as the family from generation to generation passes on, but at the same time find a space for themselves to express, to get that liberty and freedom. They are, you know, living two kinds of lives. What has been given to them, not to annoy their parents or their relatives or the social setup, but also find a space for themselves. So this is the way, especially Indian women are trained. But why? Why do they have to, as somebody told one of them, that, you know, a lori is sung for a boy and the girl is standing behind. The lori is not sung for her. Why? Why not? And one thing more which I wanted to share with you is, as I mentioned in the beginning, because I didn't want to barge into Iona's territory, so that's why I didn't talk about the exhibition. Most of us are photographers these days, and most of us think that we are doing a great job and many of us, I would say most of us, don't really think before clicking. And especially with the digital cameras on hand, it doesn't cost much, and we are now getting trained in a wrong manner, in the sense that we do not really apply a mind before clicking. So for all the photographers who are here, I would suggest that kindly think before you click. Why? The images, of course, can be given a meaning later on. So why find a logic for something which doesn't exist? Why don't have that logic before you click? the stories behind inside the gallery, they may seem to be very ordinary pictures. If you give it a passing glance, you may miss the point. As we all know, Satyajit Ray or Raghu Rai, when we look at their work, it seems, oh, I could have done it. It's so easy. It looks a very straightforward picture. It's not a straightforward picture. Every element in that, the frame, the way it's been chosen, the colors, the kind of background, the kind of shape, form, texture, and the cultural context within which it has been clicked is very important.